Let's continue talking about coding in Godot. And for this part, I want to focus on two major things. Number one, targeting one node from another node, which means I want to use the level node to influence the sprite. On top of that, I want to work with the flow. So we're going to use some if statements and some for loops. Let's jump right in. If you got so far, this shouldn't be too difficult. Here we are back in the code, and you can see we have a level node and then a logo node with a script. All of the stuff we have done in the last part. What I now want to do is to give the level node a script as well, which I do by attaching a new script. All of the default options for this one are okay. I usually don't change any of those besides the path. What you see most of the time is that people change the script next to the scene that it is attached to, which means in my case, I want to add the level script in the same folder where we have the level scene, which is what I have right now. So I'm going to click on Open and then on Create. Now you can see we have two script symbols because both of these nodes have a script attached to them. We also have the scripts available in here, which is quite nice to switch between the two. Now inside of the level, you can tell that we don't have the functions we had inside of logo, but that is only because of the preset I have selected. You can totally add func and ready, and then you get the same function. In there, I can print, let's say, level node is ready. And once I have that, I can run the entire thing again, and let me close it right away. And look at the output again. There we get level node is ready, meaning this ready function works just fine. These underscore functions you have available all of the time, meaning you can always use ready or process and a host of other ones. Let me minimize the output, and then we can work a bit more inside of the level script. Now I could be running any kind of code, the same thing we have done inside of the logo. But I want to do something else. What I want to do is from inside of this script, level.gd, I want to update the logo. And let's say I want to update the rotation. That we can do quite easily, but first of all, I want to go back to logo.gd, and in there, I want to comment out the test scale, because this is scaling everything too fast and we can't see what's happening anymore. To comment out code in GDScript, you would use Control or Command and K. If you add that, you are adding a comment. Alternatively, you can also simply add the hashtag symbol and then you're adding a comment. So I can get, for example, to positions, add the hashtag, and then you have commented it out. Both is fine. I tend to use Control or Command K because it's a bit faster, but choose whatever you like. With that, if I run the code again, you can see that we have the Godot symbol moving to the right, and we have a starting rotation of 45 degrees, which is what we're getting here. Let's comment out this one as well. So we are starting with a rotation of 0 degrees. That is looking like a good start. Now inside of level.gd, I want to change the rotation of the logo. For that, we first of all have to get the logo. And this is what I talked about in the last video. Let me bring up the slide again. There towards the end, I talked about that we can target nodes in two ways. We could either use getNode and then a node path, or a $sign along with the node path. Both of those would give us a node. And then on this node, we can change the properties. For example, we could get the node path and then dot position. I hope you can read that. And we could simply attach a new vector too. Back in Godot, I want to get a node. And now the autocomplete is already giving me a couple of options. We either have a dot, which doesn't do anything, or we have the logo. And with that, we have the logo. What we could do now, for example, is to change the rotation. And for that, we need degrees. Let's change it to 90 degrees. With that, if I run all of this again, there we have a 90-degree rotation for the Godot symbol. This is one way to get a node. Alternatively, what you are probably going to use much more often is a $sign and then the name or the path of the node you want to target. In this case, logo. If I run the entire scene again, we are getting the same result. As a matter of fact, you don't actually have to type it. What you can also do, if I get rid of it, you can simply select and click on the node you want to get and then drag it into the code editor. And if you then drop it, you get the name of the node, or rather the path of the node. Same thing. This we can also target multiple times. For example, we can once again use func_process, then get the logo with $logo, and then the rotation in degrees. We could, for example, plus equal 0.1. If I now run the scene again, we get a very slow rotation. Let's increase the number by a fair amount. Let's say I want to increase it by 1 degree on every frame of the game. That is much more visible, and certainly it is working. To make it even more visible, let me change it to a 10. If I run this again, much more visible. Cool. That is what I wanted. So with that, we can now target other nodes. Next up, I want to work on the flow. Let's say I want to add an if statement that if the rotation is greater than 180 degrees, I want to change the rotation back to 0. For that, we will need an if statement. I want to get if, and then I can target the logo once again, and I want to get the rotation underscore degrees. And if that is greater than 180, then I want to get this same node, so I can just copy it and set the rotation degrees to 0. Also, I realized this should be an uppercase L for both of these nodes. What you want to keep in mind that these properties you can either set or read. Both is totally fine. Let's run all of this again. And this is quite hard to see, but let me run it again. And it is certainly working because the face of Godot is switching around. This isn't too visible, but the really important thing is the if statement. You basically add if, like in Python, and then the condition. For this one, we're comparing the rotation degrees against a number, 180 in this case. What you also see quite often is that people put parentheses around them. The result would be the same. And this is something I really want to practice. I want you guys to update the position of the sprite. If it is greater than 1000, move it back to 0. And I am purely talking about the horizontal axis. If this is our starting position, 0, we're going to add a line of 1000 pixels. The sprite is going to start on position 0 and to continuously move to the right. Once it reaches the point 1000, I want you guys to move it back to the starting position. That way it doesn't move infinitely to the right. Also, all of this has to be on the level node. So now pause the video and try to implement this one. Back in the code, the rotation is kind of confusing, so I just want to get rid of it along with the comment. We don't need any of that. Instead, I want to get an if statement. Once again, I want to get the logo. On that, I want to get the position, and this is going to return a vector 2. Meaning on that, I can either target X or I can target Y. In my case, I only want to look at X. If this is greater than 1000, I want to do something. So colon, and if I now press enter, we get another level of indentation. Just to see if this is working, I want to print, let's say, position exceeded. With that, I can run the code again, and now if we reach 1000 pixels, at some point we get position exceeded. With that, we know this if statement is working perfectly fine. That means we can use it. Once again, let me copy it and set the position to 0. If we run the code now, we should move back to 0. Although we are not. Let's explore what went wrong, and I would very much recommend you to investigate this yourself. You can find all of the information inside of the logo GD script. We do know that this if statement is working, so something is wrong with this line. And well, the issue is inside of the logo GD script, we are storing the position inside of this vector that I called pos. And we are updating this pos vector, and then we are setting the position to the pos. The problem essentially is inside of level. When we are updating position.x and set it to 0, we are actually setting the position of this sprite to 0. However, what is happening right after, inside of logo.gd, we are setting another position, the one we have specified here. Because of that, we are overwriting what we have done inside of this line. Now, to fix that, all we have to do is to change the position to pos. That way, we don't update the position itself. Instead, we are updating this pos vector, which is responsible for the position. Which means now this should be working. And there we go. This is looking much better. It keeps on working, perfect. Basically, we want to control the position with the pos variable, which is a vector too. And when you target a node from another node, in this case the level, you can target any of the attributes. They can either be some of the inbuilt ones, like position, or it can be one of the attributes that you have created, like pos. You can target both just fine. Finally, before I finish this video, let's have a look at the for loop. And for that, we're going to need an array. And let's create one in the entire scope of the class. I want to create var test array, and this is going to be an array that is only accepting, let's say, a string for the data inside. For an array, you need square brackets, and since we only have strings inside, we will need either single or double quotation marks. Usually what you see in Godot are double quotation marks, but single ones work just as well. I'm going to add some random words. It doesn't really matter what you add in here, and stuff. Also, let's extend the entire thing so we can see all of it. Cool. Now we have an array full of strings. If you want to look at every single value individually, you would need a for loop, which basically means we want for, and then we need a name for the value, just like in Python. Let's call it for I in test array. Then we need a colon, and then inside of this for loop, we can, for example, print I. If I now run the code, you can see in the bottom, we have test, hello, and stuff. The content of the array. If you're used to Python, this should feel very familiar. Or in fact, if you know any programming language, this shouldn't be too difficult. On top of that, you can also use indexing. If, for example, I only wanted to print the first value, I can go print the test array, and then the index 0. Once again, if I run all of this, we get test, which is the first value inside of the array. So I hope all of this is reasonably straightforward.